Anyways, let's talk about comics on the top of our pile. These are new comics, old comics. If you've been here before, you know what we're all about. If not, we're talking about comics, baby. But before we get into that, I want to shout out some of the folks hanging out with us on Discord. They're reading some books, and this is on the top of their pile. Danny's reading Rebel Moon, House of the Blood Axe #1. Who reads movie tie-ins these days? I don't know. Hugh is reading Rise of the Powers of X #1. And Paul G is finally reading Where the Body Was. That's a fantastic book, Paul. I can't wait for you to love it. But I guess, Kate, let me pitch things back over to you. What is on the top of your pile this week?
The top of my pile is a book big enough to kill a cat or small dog. The Planetary Omnibus hardcover, which I just grabbed from my library. This is by Warren Ellis and John Cassidy. I don't know why publishers make books this size. This is like, there's a very good chance I'm going to give up and just get it from Hoopla or something if I can find a digital copy of Volume 1, because it is like almost unreadably huge. But on that end, I am feeling very sci-fi because I recently discovered, and by discovered, I mean it's been on my list for many years because of Zander, The Expanse, and have gone so hard and deep on this over Christmas break and just want more sci-fi in my life. And I'm not positive how sci-fi Planetary is, but it involves space, and my library's collection is not that big. So
okay.
So the base.
Go ahead, Kate. Go ahead. I'll give my thoughts after you finish talking about why you're excited about this book.
Okay. So the basics of this are there's 3 people that are tracking down evidence of superhuman activity on in the late 20th century. They're archaeologists of a sort, and uncovering unknown paranormal secrets and histories, such as a World War II supercomputer that can access other universes, a ghostly spirit of vengeance, in a lost island of dying monsters. Sounds like it might be more cape flavor than sci-fi flavor, but again, I have like 2 or 3 shelves of comics for adult comics at my library. Yay, rural living. So, they spent a lot of money on this omnibus, I'm sure. So we'll check it out.
Yeah. I was gonna say, if I feel like this book definitely leads more pulp comics than it does sci-fi. That being said, I think there's a lot of really cool like sci-fi shit in this book. Having read it, I read it a couple of years ago. And yeah, it's got some really cool bits in it. I think I like the way that all of the characters get developed. The mystery box that is as a character gets unfolded in a really interesting way. And I think by the end, I felt pretty satisfied with the end of it. There is also a crossover which might be included in this omnibus with the Justice League, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
So I'd be curious to see what you think about it, Kate, because I do think like. Go ahead.
Didn't Warren Ellis write Trees?
Yes.
Okay, so I really like Trees. I hope that this is written as well, because that had a cool mystery to it.
Yeah. I mean, the one little asterisk that I will just put on this book as far as recommendations go is like Warren Ellis, not so great of a guy. So just for anyone out there, look up Warren Ellis allegations. That's all I'll say. That being said, though, this book is a pretty interesting story. I do like like I said, the development of the characters is very cool in a way that like feels like classic hard sci-fi. But it's all about comic book characters in a way. Like, I think there's some afterwards and some other things I've read about the book where there are references to things that are like deep in pulp comic book and story or pulp literature, like history, but it's not necessary to know to enjoy this book. So curious to hear what you think at the end. Okay, because it's a big old book, as you said. It's literally like a beefy beast. So
did you read the whole series?
I think I read everything but the crossover that they did. So
okay.
But it's a fast read too. I mean, like it's dense, but I think it's a pretty fast read. It's like 4 or 5 volumes total. Well, let me talk about a book that it's on the top of my pile as I'm going through my giant bookshelf. That book that I read by Linnea Sturt came from a Kickstarter. This next book also came from a Kickstarter. This is Ruination Volume One, written by Ryan Biss, art by Sarah Fletcher, Elizabeth McKenzie, and Julia Lally, colors by Katie Brown, letters by Matthias Zanetti. The simple pitch of this book: soldiers embark on an adventure filled with magic crystals, secret wars, and portals to strange post-apocalyptic worlds. I mean, come on, doesn't that have everything that everyone wants in a comic book? Uh, there was a bigger, better pitch, I think, for the entire first issue that got me hooked, because I backed the first few issues, and now I'm looking at my digital folder of things. I backed all 6 issues on Kickstarter digitally, but I figured I'd get the physical edition of this book because I did really like the first 2 issues that I read. I have a terrible habit of backing things on Kickstarter and then completely forgetting to read them. But I just want to support indie comics, okay? But anyways, the book was a little complicated in terms that it has a lot of lore, and I feel like reading a single issue every 3 or 4 or 5 months is kind of hard when you've got like a big lore. So I was excited to get the collection of this so that I can sit down and actually give it its due time to read through, absorb everything, and be fully invested in the universe. So I'm very excited to sit down with that. I got the nice hardcover edition of this late last year, and so I'm excited. It's sitting on my bookshelf just over to my right here, but it should be fun. High fantasy magic shit that I really like, so I'm hyped to actually sit down and dig into this. Paul, this is totally up your alley, right?
Oh yeah, sounds like the kind of things I like all the time. Space, magic, crystals. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, tell us about what's on the top of your pile before we go into our break.
Well, it's funny. Speaking of something that I really kind of like is way out of my wheelhouse that I don't know much about, the book I'm excited about is Deep Cuts #4, which is about jazz. And I'm too dumb to get jazz, but I really like this book a lot. This is #4 of a 6-issue miniseries that Image is publishing. It's written by Joe Clark and Kyle Higgins. This issue has art by Ramon K. Perez. And it's funny, I thought I had missed a few issues of this because the last issue #3, came out back in July. So I thought,
wow.
I missed it. I'll just have to grab the collection. But I saw it was on the list coming up this week in the shop. So I was like, oh, maybe it just got delayed for whatever reason. So, but it's a really interesting series. Each issue is kind of like a standalone story that takes place in a different era of jazz history. And, Joe Clark and Kyle Higgins do a lot of research and kind of recreate this style of jazz is being played at a certain time. So the first issue is set in 1917. You get the sort of like ragtime jazz era stuff. Then it'll go on to the 1930s and 40s. And this issue is set in the 1950s in New York and the start of bebop and hard bop jazz, which again, I took a jazz history class in college, so I know the terms, but as far as listening to it, it's so not my thing. But I think what's great is that each issue isn't really about the music itself. I mean, it's a celebration of jazz as an art form, but there's a very unique emotional story to each issue, and they're all standalone different stories. So it's like a collection, it's like an anthology kind of. And this issue is about, an ex-con who gets out of prison, a former band leader, and he's trying to get his band back together and his life back together at the same time in 1950s New York. So it's, it's an engaging emotional story as well as being a reflection of, a certain era of American musical history. So even if you're not into jazz like me, there's still something in the story that'll really grab your attention. And what I like is that attention to detail that Clark and Higgins bring to each story. So you really get a sense of that, even if, again, it's a silent comic, you can't hear the music, but the imagery, the style of the pages, the artwork, it all kind of like makes you sort of feel what that era is like. And you kind of get a sense of like what the music meant to people at that time in history. And then each issue, they hire a jazz musician to write like a little like musical piece. So there's like a 1 page in the back of the issue that is musical notation, that's written to fit the comic. And it's like, boy, I kind of wish I learned how to read music so I know what that is. It looks cool, but I imagine at some point someone's gonna have to do like a playlist or something, or maybe someone will play those pieces to kind of see what they sound like. But it's a really interesting series. This Deep Cuts, this is the 4th issue out of 6. So if you're not picking it up or you missed a few, definitely worth checking out in trade when it eventually comes out, because it's really fun.
Nice. Well, 2024, Paul, now it's time to start learning an instrument, and you could learn that music, and you could be the person that puts the video up on the IRCB channel that's like, hey, Kyle Higgins and Ramon K. Perez and Joe Clark, look what I did. And they'll go,
yeah,
nice try, bud.
How does it sound on kazoo? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I love it. I figured you'd pick up clarinet or something like that, but let's talk about that in the break. We're going to take a quick break.